Hi everyone, I'm Rachel. In this tutorial, I'll teach you how to color hyper-realistic green eyes using the Color Therapy app. In this tutorial, I'll show you how to really go in depth with detail in the pupils. And after this, you'll be able to apply this using other colors in the app as well. Find this image under Close-Up Eye in the search box. Okay, so the first thing to do is select your base color for the pupil and tap to fill it in. So under the green palette, I'm using a solid green. It's the third green on the top row, and I'm just tapping to fill it into the iris. And then to fill in the areas where the fishtails are, go under the AIRBRUSH tool. Set the size to 50 and opacity to 25. And then make sure coloring inside the lines mode is set to off, and then you can just fill in those areas where the fish are overlapping it. Now using the first color on the top row from the green palette, with the same settings as before, we're going to shade around the iris. So just go ahead and just do a couple layers of shading, just circling around it loosely. Now again, using the same settings, let's select black from the basic palette, and then we're going to just make the pupil a bit larger. So I'm just circling around it, just making it a little bit bigger for more contrast and drama. Now go over to the warm palette. Select the fourth color from the top row from the right, sort of a light gray color, and that will be for the whites of the eyes. You can go ahead and use those same settings and just manually add it in very carefully. Don't worry too much yet about the edges, because we're going to work on that later. Now in the warm palette again, let's choose the third color on the top row, sort of a beige green. With the AIRBRUSH tool, set the size to 1 and opacity at 100. Now we're going to draw zigzag lines going all the way around the pupil in the green area. So sort of something like this. Make some of them smaller and some of them larger. You can space them around a little bit. Let's blend that with the smear tool. Set the size to 20 and intensity at 100. So just use your finger and just smear it up and down. You can bring some of the pupil into the green as well, just a little bit here and there. So I'm smearing it all the way around the pupil, just back and forth so it blends smoothly. Now go over to the yellow palette, scroll over and choose the fifth color on the top row, and then select the splatter tool. Set the size at 40 and opacity at 20. Now just take your finger and splatter around the whole middle of the eye. Now go to the hair shades palette and choose color on the second row, so it's a dark brown, and go back to the splatter tool. This time set the size to 10 and opacity at 90. Now you can dot in little bits of splatters into the eyeball. So little areas here and there with darker splatters. Now let's go over to the pen tool, set the size between 1 and 2, and opacity at 45. And then in the yellow palette, we'll just use the very last color on the top row. Now we're going to be drawing little filaments in the eye, so these little like lines kind of just coming outward from the pupil. So again, it's sort of like a back and forth stroke, sort of zigzags, just going up and down all the way around the pupil. Kind of scribbling a little bit, so just doing these lines. Some of them can be longer and some can be shorter. Don't worry if it goes inside the pupil a little bit, we'll clean that up too later. I'll also use this beige orange color from the pastel palette. It's the fourth color on the top row, and just adding in a few little more filaments in there. You can raise the size again, like I said, from 1 to 2% if you want, just for more variation. Now we're going to use the smear tool again. You can leave the same settings, and again we're just going to blend, just pushing and pulling the color back and forth from the pupil outwards into the iris. And you don't have to do every single area, you could just do a few here and there. All right, now with the pen tool, set the size at 2 and opacity at 80. And then in the yellow palette, just select the first color on the top row. Now we're gonna draw some large ovals in the eyes. So something kind of like this, like these weird little shapes like this, different sizes. You can do some larger as well. And you don't have to fill them in, you can just kind of make the outlines of them. Some of them can be filled in or not, it's up to you. And just go all the way around the iris. You can clump some together. Now lower the size to 1, and then we're going to trace them with black. So zooming in here, so I'll just do a little trace around each one like that. You can also add in little dots using your finger too, just all around the eye. You can raise the size to 2 if you'd like. Now going back to the last color on the top row of the yellow palette, we're going to go ahead and add in more little filaments like we did before. This time I'm going to just trace around those speckles that we did, and I'm just kind of connecting them with those filaments, and you can bring it down into the pupil as well. So just going back over those like this, just tracing around them. Now go back to the sphere tool, size at 1 and intensity 100. Again, we're gonna blend that again, just smearing and smoothing all of those lines. So some of these areas you can just leave a little bit more clear and some can be a bit more blurry. Now go to the hair shades palette and choose the 6th color on the top row. Using the splatter tool, we'll set the size to 65 and opacity at 60, and just go ahead and spray little dots around the eye. So little splatters everywhere. Now you want to make the pupil black again, so go to the airbrush tool, set the opacity at 100 and size around 50, and just fill it in so it's nice and fully black. Just lower the size to about 40 now, and then shade all the way around the edge of the iris and the top. You can make it just a little bit darker in the top area. And for the highlight, just leave the same settings and then just fill in that white area for the highlight, the oval. And then lower the size to 1. You can draw a little crescent shape if you want on the side. For a bonus, you can add a little sparkle in the eye with the fairy dust tool. Set the opacity at 100 and size at 35. And then all you do is just one little dot with your finger and you have a little sparkle in the eye. Finish the rest of the eye by adding in details like the eyelashes, shading the skin, and even adding little red blood vessels to the whites of the eyes. If you'd like to see more tutorials like this, don't forget to subscribe to the Color Therapy YouTube channel so you don't miss any new tutorial videos. Thanks for watching our tutorial. You can get the Color Therapy app for free on the App Store.